Hi, I'm Kimiko, author of Kimiko Does Cancer, a graphic memoir about my experience getting cancer at 25 years old.
And I am Keith, co-author and illustrator of Kimiko Does Cancer.
We both learned a lot by collaborating together, and so wanted to share with you all our top 5 tips on comic collaboration.
Tip number 1, create a contract.
We both found it invaluable to have a written agreement setting out expectations around intellectual property, payment, who owns character designs, that kind of thing. Even if you think you've got a relatively straightforward partnership, there are all sorts of things that you might want to think through. What is included in the page rate? Is it how many rounds of edits? What's the cost if you go beyond that round of edits? What happens with royalties? All these sorts of things are very useful to think about at the front end. And, we're not always used to having these conversations, especially with somebody new. Money is an awkward thing to talk about, and it's a bit like a prenup. You're thinking about the end, even if, you're just at the start. But it really helped for us anyways create a sense of trust and understanding around what's going to happen as we go forward, and how will we deal with things if there's a breakdown.
Creating a contract together is a chance for artists to advocate for ourselves, in terms of rates, deadlines, fees, copyrights, royalties, stuff like that. What also helped is that our agreement is always open to renegotiation, and there was a lot of room for flexibility and compromise, which is super important.
When it comes to actually drafting the contract, there's a bunch of resources available online. We actually started with a template from the Artist Nonprofit Association, CARFAC, and then we just tweaked it to make it work for our arrangement. I also opted to get it reviewed by an intellectual property lawyer just to get a second set of eyes on it. Now, you don't have to be as formalistic as that, but the important thing is to get your expectations down in writing so there's clarity between the two of you.
Tip number 2, decide on roles.
I knew that I was completely out of my depth when it came to this project. I didn't have a background in comics at all, even really as a reader. So it was hugely beneficial to have Keat take the lead on illustrating and designing the pages, but also to help in drawing out the narrative and developing a more complex and nuanced storyline. Now, it's not that there's one way that's better than the other. As with everything, it's just important to make sure that the arrangement works for both of you.
Tip number 3, address conflict openly and compassionately.
The other important thing is to check in regularly, especially when you're talking about a multi-year project on a very personal topic. You want to make sure that both of you are still on the same page at regular intervals. So in our case, we would check in and talk to each other, especially if there were any tensions that one or the other of us were feeling. We would suss out if the other person needed something different from us, or simply wanted an acknowledgement about something that happened. The other thing to think about around this is, how do you want to have those conversations? So some people work best in person. A little tricky with COVID, but maybe increasingly possible again. Some people prefer to have phone calls, some people emails or text messages. So it's not just about having the conversations, but how do you want to have the conversations, and what feels most productive and comfortable for both of you.
Addressing conflict with openness and compassion was one of the key things that made our collaboration work out. On my end, it helped me get rid of a defensiveness I had over my work and process. I was so used to working alone, and so it was kind of like a change to work closely with somebody else. But I also believe that making art and conflict are avenues for transformation if you let it, and I did. And I learned a lot about myself. I would even say that having conflict with Kimiko and addressing it openly strengthened our working relationship. Tip number 4, communicate boundaries and capacity. Artists, this is a PSA. Communicate your boundaries and capacity. Remember to take breaks and communicate any concerns you may have with your collaborator. For me, I find it's important to keep me interested and engaged in my work. Even talk about delegating work if you have to, because like there was one point in our collaboration that we had to hire an editor to have another perspective on the narrative. It was a great idea because, I was like in the literal verge of burning out by the time. For me, it's more important to also keep the relationship with my collaborator open. And so it was important for me to express my feelings.
While we were working on the comic, we also got inspired with a bunch of other ideas. A zine, merch, a greeting card line, and it was hard not to want to just jump into those other side projects. But we realized we had to keep our focus. The priority was finishing the comic, and we could deal with all those other side projects later.
Tip number 5, have fun. Having fun is so important in a collaboration. I made a project out of the meta comic on our Instagram at Kimiko Does Cancer. Just for me to have fun and have a way to document the fun times in our collaboration, like going to TCAF together and scoping out like other creators and projects. Also enjoying like coincidences like me and Kimiko getting dogs on the same day without us knowing. That was cool.
I learned so much through this process on a personal level, therapeutic level, and also about a whole new art form. It wasn't easy work, but it was very satisfying work. And we also made sure to lighten things up along the way however we could. So we both love food, and we made a point of meeting over food. We also like to show appreciation for the other one through little gifts through snail mail. So, each person, whatever works best for the two of you, but the important thing is don't take the other person for granted.
To recap, these are 5 tips to have a great collaboration. Number 1, create a contract. Number 2, decide on roles. Number 3, address conflict openly and compassionately. Number 4, communicate boundaries and capacity. And number 5, have fun.
We hope you picked up some useful ideas for approaching your own collaboration.